Are you somebody who lacks consistency in your game? Well, today I want to highlight some of the big changes that we've seen in the game of golf over the last sort of 20 or 30 years when it comes to coaching, okay? And there's quite a distinct change between how we used to see a lot of the guys, not all of the guys, but certainly a lot of guys, you know, in the sort of 60s, 70s and 80s compared to sort of the 90s, noughties and onwards to the present day. And the big change is the way that body moves, okay? So what we saw a lot, you know, in years gone by is a big lateral move, okay, where we'd see a lot of guys kind of swinging over to the right and then swinging over to the left. So we would see a big shift into the right side on the backswing and then a big lateral move into the downswing, into that sort of follow through position. Now what that causes, and again we do see it in a lot of club golfers who get very inconsistent, is we see a lot of inconsistency in strike. We lose that low point control, okay? So if we think of our setup, our two center points are our pelvis and our sternum, and if we get a big lateral move in the backswing, our low points are moving so far behind the ball that the only way you can get any level of consistency is by shifting and getting that big lateral move into your downswing. And ultimately it's so hard to control, okay? One of the highest profile guys that did it was Nick Faldo, okay? So he did it with David Ledbetter in the early 90s, where he had a big swing change, okay? And what it's all around is staying centered, okay? So getting a centered pivot in your golf swing, particularly in your backswing, okay? So instead of this lateral move now, we see the majority of golfers that you will see out on tour will have a centered pivot, okay? Now what that means is that as we make a backswing, the hip, the right hip in particular, that trail hip rotates back, the shoulders move back and rotate in this sort of centered fashion. So these two center points, they stay very, very central. So in this position here, we see that head staying completely still with very minimal lateral movement at all. So we've gone from sort of this position to now rotating in this centered pivot. And I help guys all the time really trying to get this centered pivot. And really, essentially all you're trying to do is, you know, from this behind position is allow that hip to go back, allow that back leg to straighten. Again, we would see so many guys trying to keep this back knee flexed. It would definitely lead to a lot of injury, but it would also lead to very minimal rotation, and you're going to get so much more distance. Yes, we're going to get consistency, but you imagine as soon as we start to rotate that trail hip, let that back leg extend more, it allows you to rotate, so get the club further back, but most importantly it allows you to stay centered and on top of the ball, okay? So as I said, for me the best drill that I've done with a lot of guys is really just club across the chest, allowing the hips to turn and really trying to feel like that grip end is pointing down. Again, from this angle here, if the ball was in this position, we'd really try and get that hip back, get that club pointing slightly beyond the ball, but certainly we wouldn't want it, you know, shifting over in this fashion. So some big shifts in golf coaching and what we've seen in the tour players. Yes, you know, there's no doubt we've seen guys like Ben Hogan in the past that have been nice and centered as well. So it's not everyone, but there's definitely been that shift into this sort of modern day where generally we're going to be nice and centered. The odd exception might be in your long drive guys that do have a big lateral move, because it can be super powerful, but as far as consistency goes, a centered pivot is definitely going to help you. As always guys, if you would like any help, if you would like more one-to-one tuition, hit me up on Skillest. There's a link in the description below. In the meantime, I'll see you next time.